As the dust settles from the shootout in the bar, Clint and Annie are searching the joint for any clues as to where the kid gang might be holed up, when they feel the ground shake, again and again and again. Like the ripples in the water in that iconic Jurassic Park scene. Something's approaching, something huge. Clint and Annie hear the noise outside and head to the rooftop to get a better view. I think if you're not well and truly on board with Wild Guns by the time this boss is on screen, then there's nothing anyone can do for you. You're beyond saving. That's all. This is part 3 of Overthinking Wild Guns. Before we get into it, something I forgot to bring up in the first episode is that it may have been a loose homage to Gunfight at the OK Corral. Homage? Homage? I don't know. A real historical event and one of the most famous shootouts in the Old West. It's been recreated in more than half a dozen movies, including the film Tombstone, named after the town it took place in, which came out the year before Wild Guns released. Wild Guns had a development of only 5 months. I'm not even going to touch on just how amazing it is that this masterpiece was created in such a short time by such a small crew. What I will touch on is how that makes it not only plausible that Tombstone influenced the development of the game, but how likely it is. It wasn't just an iconic, successful Western. It was a very recent, iconic, successful Western. I have no way of confirming whether or not Tombstone did, in fact, influence the opening moments of Wild Guns, but I'd say it's not just possible, it's probable. Of course, it could have simply been a play on the old high noon shootout in the middle of town that creeps its way into every bit of Old West media. Same as how the section that follows is a riff on the old saloon setting that's about as common a trope as it comes. And I think those settings were very deliberate choices for the first 2 sections, because when you get to the rooftop, the rug's pulled out from beneath you. By having those first 2 areas be Wild West staples with a sci-fi aesthetic, the game sets the player's expectations. Then you get to the rooftop, and a giant robot, bigger than the 2-story building you're standing on, saunters in wielding a minigun, and everything you think you knew about the game goes out the fucking window. Well, not exactly everything, but it definitely tells you not to get too comfortable with your assumptions. And not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but the game really does make good on that promise. There are some crazy boss designs and environmental details that I can't wait to talk about later. Now, as awesome as this boss is, and he is awesome, he isn't particularly difficult. Stay as far away from him as possible, aim for the head, and it's a done deal. He isn't a pushover, and if you're not focused, he will get you. But the previous 2 sections teach you everything you need to know and give you the necessary time to get in the zone. So by the time you reach him, it should be a fairly cathartic and confidence-boosting fight. I wish I could zero in on what may have influenced his design, but honestly I feel like the inspiration could have come from any number of places. I guess it's not important. Look how awesome he looks on the cover. He's the iconic boss of Wild Guns, and when people think of Wild Guns, they probably think of this guy. I literally only know one other person who's played the game, and I can't be bothered asking him, so I can't really verify that claim, but I stand by it anyway. Last thing I want to say is that while not their primary objective, Clint and Annie may have freed Carson City from the kid gang's control when they took down the giant robot. It's not like we stick around to find out, but I mean, it makes sense. They mow down a ton of gang members, trashed the bar that they might have used as their base of operations in the city, and took out their greatest weapon. Speaking of Carson City, there's a movie by that name that has more than a couple of similarities to Wild Guns, but like the OK Corral, a lot of things like gold mines, train robberies, and so on, are all fairly standard Western tropes. Anyway, I can't imagine the rest of the kid gang would take the Carson City thing lying down, but that's something we'll get into in the next episode. Episode 3 of Overthinking Wild Guns is over. I don't really have too much else to say about it. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you haven't played Wild Guns before, please do yourself a favor and check it out. There's a remastered version with new levels and characters that looks pretty good, but if you can, check out the original on the Super Nintendo. Alright, I'm out of here. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.